How's everyone doing? So, I am Nancy Love, a recent college graduate and a community activist. Thank you all so much for being here today, for standing with survivors and calling for a legal system that is fair and just. Some form of sexual violence, and this has been happening to us since the beginning of society. I don't think that is talked enough today. So when I first read the news about the New Jersey judges, I was sick with rage. It immediately brought me back to Brock Turner's trial. I wanted to cry. I wanted to hide in my bed to hit something, because this keeps happening over and over and over again. In a 2016 case in New Jersey, Judge John Russo told the woman survivor seeking a restraining order that she could have closed her legs to prevent sexual assault. And now he is facing a sexual harassment and discrimination lawsuit by a former clerk. 2 days ago, a victim's mother reached out to me, sharing to me the fact that Judge Joseph Ria told her to keep her mouth shut and sit down when she pled for fairness. This happened last month. These are not rare incidences. This is the sick norm. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done if we want to change this. First, Judge Troiano and Judge Silva resign now. Or you will be removed. We, the public, will not forget your words. Your blatant misogyny and callousness towards all survivors does not make you fit for court. As a public, we cannot let this happen again. That is why I'm echoing New Jersey Coalition Against Sexual Assault support of sexual assault case training for all New Jersey judges. Thank you so much. And with that, I pass the mic to Indra, this incredible advocate at Manavi.
Hi everyone, my name is Indra, and I work for Manavi as an advocate for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. Thank you all so much for being here today to stand up for survivors' rights and to speak out against a terrible injustice that has taken place in our community. This case feels very personal to me. I grew up here in Monmouth County. I went through the Freehold Regional High School District school system, attended the same high school as the rapist in this case, and when I was 14, I was sexually assaulted by a classmate. I never told anyone about what happened to me until years later, and as an adult, I've often wondered if that was the right choice, particularly because my rapist never faced any consequences and is now in a profession where he has access to vulnerable people. This case has brought me the worst kind of closure. I no longer have to wonder whether it was a mistake not reporting the rape or seeking any kind of legal recourse, because everything I feared has now been confirmed. In the past few weeks, I've had to face the harsh truth that if we are still protecting rapists today over survivors, there's no way our judicial system would have protected me 14 years ago or helped me to get justice. While we were all reeling from Brock Turner, it turns out the exact same thing was happening right here in our backyards. Judge Troiano says that he declined to charge GMC as an adult because in his mind there is a distinction between a sexual assault and a rape. It is deeply distressing to find ourselves in the position of having to explain to a man who has been a sitting judge for decades that the arbitrary distinction he draws in his mind is utterly irrelevant to the law. Judge Troiano, you said that in your mind, the traditional case of rape is one where multiple strangers are holding someone at gun or knife point. Do you not see how it could be equally damaging, if not more so, to be raped by someone you attended school with, trusted, and were possibly even friends with? You said that it is crucial to examine the facts of this case. When I look at the facts, I see a rapist who violently assaulted an acquaintance when she was intoxicated and helpless. Yet, despite acknowledging the fact that she was too intoxicated to consent by multiple accounts, court transcripts show you repeatedly cast doubt on her story. Reading your words turned my stomach. Your blatant disregard for the victim and your indifference towards her pain is shocking. Your only concern seems to be for the rapist, his achievements as an Eagle Scout, his college prospects. What about her life? What about her academic pursuits, her achievements, and the dreams she had for her future? Why does none of that seem to hold the same value for you? His academic accolades, his athletic ability, and any potential he once showed for a successful future, none of that matters anymore. All of that ceased to be relevant the moment he decided to rape a girl who was nearly unconscious. How dare you put the waste of his potential on the prosecutor or the victim or her family? Have you considered that someone who comes from all of that privilege and chooses to use that privilege to rape and get away with it might not have had that much potential to begin with? I have a message for Judge Troiano, Judge Silva, Judge Persky, and every other judge who has ever prioritized the well-being of a rapist over that of his victim. Time is up. It is time for people with power and privilege to stop deflecting blame and begin holding themselves accountable for the destructive consequences of their thoughtless actions. And that includes you, Judge Troiano. We demand that you accept accountability for the harm you have caused to this community. To the child whose trauma you so callously dismissed, to the family who has had to watch her suffer, and to every other survivor who has followed this case and felt your utter indifference to our pain and felt the cruelty of your words resonate as if they were spoken directly to us. What you have done here is put Monmouth County on the map as yet another place where abusers are treated with more respect and consideration than survivors, where the only person who is expected to face the consequences of another's choice to rape is their victim. We call for you not only to resign, but to take initiative and educate yourself on how you have been complicit in perpetuating rape culture. Yes. Your handling of this case re-traumatized a rape victim and invalidated her pain, and you cannot take that back. That is one more trauma she will have to live with for the rest of her life. There is nothing you can do to undo the harm you have caused, but you can work to make sure this never happens again. You can set an example for other judges and other men by taking accountability, seeking trauma-informed sexual assault case training, and demanding that your colleagues do the same. The time for change is now. Thank you. Activist and the Action Vice President of Now, New Jersey. Please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you for this opportunity. I can't even begin to address the harm that's being done by judges in New Jersey today. There's a reason why women don't stand up and report, and this is a big reason. So I'm here on behalf of the National Organization for Women of New Jersey. We are calling for the removal of Judge Troiano and Silva from sitting judges on any bench in the state of New Jersey. Through their separate actions, they have shown themselves to be incapable of setting aside their personal biases. Their comments from the bench betray their ignorance of the realities of rape and gender and class biases harmful not just to the victim, but to the due process of law and the equal protection of New Jersey citizens. We feel strongly that sexual assault and rape victims, who are primarily women and girls, deserve justice. We commend the Appellate Division of the Superior Court of New Jersey for overturning the decisions of Judge James Troiano of Monmouth County, New Jersey, and Judge Marcia Silva of Middlesex County, New Jersey, both of whom refused to allow 16-year-old accused rapists to be tried as adults. We commend all those who are here today and those who have spoken out today and every day. They need to be respected. They deserve justice. They deserve judges who will consider the harm done to victims of rape as seriously as the background of the perpetrators. Time and again in this country, rapists are given a pass while the victims suffer. And we say enough. This needs to stop now. It needs to stop today. New Jersey can do better, and we must do better. This is why we call for the removal of these two judges. Thank you.
The next speaker is Christine Clark, an environmental activist.
Rape is a crime of power. Being raped is a crime in which your power over your body is taken from you. Rape victims are violated in the most private, personal, dehumanizing, and lasting of ways. And the manner in which the privileged, heinous crimes we are talking about today reflects that. It's horrifying that a victim who went before Judge Troiano was not only raped, but then had to deal with there being a video recording of the crime. And it's even worse that she had to get her parents involved, tell them this, and ask them to file charges on her behalf. A rapist who is an Eagle Scout is still a rapist. A rapist bragging about rape is not a boy saying stupid crap to his friends. Intoxication does not justify rape. Rape is the fault alone of the rapist who raped someone. This judge's comments demonstrate the toxic male culture that normalizes rape, that makes it okay to treat vulnerable victims like they are somehow lesser, that cause them to internalize and carry with them for years the idea that they are somehow lesser or were deserving. This is the kind of toxicity that suppresses victims from coming forward to ask for justice. And Judge Silva is no better. Wearing a condom when raping a little girl doesn't mean that rape was any less a crime of power. Her victimhood was a loss of her power over her own body as a child. The after effects of that crime will stay with her for the rest of her life. Judge Silva had no business deciding for a 12-year-old girl that a rapist stealing her personal power over her own body wasn't especially heinous or cruel. Ask her in 20 years how she feels about it. Ask her again when she's someday a mother how she feels about it. Ask her again when she has daughters. Unfortunately, normalization of rape culture comes from some women too. We need to make sure we have the correct women in positions of power over others' lives and over justice so that they lift up people who need a hand, not use that privileged hand to push them farther down in life by minimizing their stories and denying justice. Judges like these almost make me grateful that when I was raped as an 8-year-old girl, I didn't know where to turn when the people who were supposed to seek justice for me didn't. Children are not taught that they have the right to go to the police themselves and report crimes themselves. They're groomed to think they have to ask trustworthy parents and teachers for help. And given there is so much stigma attached to the crime of rape, especially considering that in more than 85% of child rape cases in particular, the rapist is known to the family. That social stigma, that suppression of crimes, make it even harder for there to be actual justice. Factor in that most rape victims don't come along with the detestable evidence of a shared video in which the rapist is bragging about the crime, or a defense that hinges on, "I used a condom." If I had somehow figured out as an 8 and then 9 and then 10-year-old girl suffering through rapes, that I could go around my birth mother and around my teachers and actually report the rapes directly to the police, would I have met a judge who would dare to tell me that I needed to close my legs? This is not okay. These viewpoints are not fleeting whims. This is not one bad decision. These are real and damaging views that inflict further harm upon the victims coming to them for justice and the millions of people who are afraid to speak up and represent traumatized communities healing from what they've gone through. These viewpoints enable rape culture. New Jersey deserves much better. The reason hashtags like #MeToo and #WhyIDidn'tReport had so much power and took off like they did is because people who have never seen justice for having their bodily autonomy and their power stolen could suddenly identify. Men, women, and children who have been attacked in their lives came forward and shared stories in a moment of shared anger and grief and unity, and for some, perhaps healing or first acknowledgement. It is vile that when someone among these unfortunately large and growing communities of survivors has the strength to seek justice and stop someone else from becoming a victim of the same power, that they would be met with, "Close your legs. He's an Eagle Scout. He has good grades. He's going to a good college." What about her? What about her pain? What about her future? I believe in second chances. If these judges had made the argument that we jail too many children, that we need to be lenient when young people commit crimes, if that was their thinking, if their argument was rooted in the fact that New Jersey incarcerates too many people from too many vulnerable communities, that's one thing. That's not what happened here. I believe people can be truly sorry for what they have done, but you can't take back the toxicity that was inflicted in those judgments, that deliberate infliction of harm. What these judges did to these victims by disregarding their accusers caused real harm, and they weren't sorry until they got called out. For the denial of justice to those girls, for the denial of justice felt by so many girls who are seeing this, and so many boys who are also scared to report. Maybe there can be this measure of justice now. Remove them from the bench. Victims deserve fair hearings. Not a second loss of power in a courtroom with new people to witness it and new pain to carry for it. Thank you.
Speaker is Senator Ben Gopal, who previously called for the resignation of Judge John Russo and is now calling for the immediate resignation of Judge Troiano.
It's great to be with everyone. I want to thank the county for helping to expedite this, and Nancy and everyone for organizing this. It's important with those two judges, and I appreciate you saying that. Judge Russo, apology a little too late. He's now asking for a second chance, and what he said, that the victim should have closed her legs. He should not be on the bench for another single day at all. And the fact that that is still being considered and that's being weighed, and he's saying, well, I won't make that mistake again. You don't get a second chance for that mistake, because that victim didn't get a second chance. And we need to take a higher accountability for all of the judges, not just the two from Monmouth and Middlesex, but clearly there is a problem. And the fact that I'm the only member of the Senate right now that's called for Judge Russo to resign, we need to get all of my colleagues to step up and join and say that some of these judges, it doesn't matter who their family is, it doesn't matter where they come from, it doesn't matter how they got to the bench. If they are not on the side of victims and they are making excuses for rapists, making excuses. A rapist is a rapist. To make an excuse under any circumstance, it doesn't matter what the context of it is. It should never, ever happen, and that person, as soon as that happens one time, should be off the bench. So I join all the speakers today, but a further call for action as we try to put out new legislation. Let's get some of my colleagues on both sides of the aisles, both houses, to step up and take further scrutiny. In the year and a half I've been in the Senate, I've taken my responsibility of vetting judges very, very seriously. We need to make sure every senator does the exact same thing, and that once they are appointed, they are held accountable. We need to look at lifetime appointments and how that's hurting our courts. All these things are important, and it's so much more. Thank you all for being out here on this day, but we now need to take the next step forward in making sure we have legislative action. Thank you so much.
Our final speaker is Patricia, who is the Executive Director of the New Jersey Coalition Against Sexual Assault and a recipient of the 2013 Alice Paul Equality Award.
Good morning. So I join you today in behalf of and in support of, I don't know why I'm the only one that prints things out on paper anymore. I'm feeling very antiquated. I join you here today in support of all survivors of sexual violence. Survivors who have been re-traumatized during their pursuit of justice. Survivors who still hold the truth of their victimization close to the chest to keep it from being picked apart and discounted by others. Survivors who share their stories and bare their souls. Survivors who rage, who organize, who rally and write. I join you because we are stronger together. Yesterday, we at the Coalition released a proposed multi-pronged strategy and action plan in direct response to the horrific judicial comments that brought us all here today. And here's the crux of it. There's no easy solution. We cannot fix the inadequacies of the justice system without daring to dream new approaches to the age-old issues that stem from the patriarchy and the misogynistic systems it upholds. So, here we are. Look at all of you. Thank you all for being here. Let's hear it for our organizers, and thank you for being here to commit to change. And speaking of change, so much has changed in the anti-sexual violence movement over the last few years. While it's the product of many generations worth of work, it still sometimes catches me by surprise that we're now talking about this issue so publicly, so often, and with so much support. And as the movement has changed and amplified the voice of more survivors, it's challenged conventional approaches to preventing and responding to sexual violence. The reality is that while our society has continued to invest in the criminal justice system to respond and deter crime, an overwhelming majority of survivors of sexual violence will never access the entirety of the criminal justice system. Out of every 1,000 sexual assaults, 230 are reported to the police. 46 will lead to an arrest, 9 will land on a prosecutor's desk, and 5 will land to a felony conviction. About 6 weeks ago, NJ Casa launched the first ever statewide sexual violence survivor survey. With close to 300 respondents to date, survivors in New Jersey affirm what we've been saying: justice reform is essential. 89% of the survivors who've responded to our survey to date indicate that the person who harmed them was known to them. 78.5% did not report the incident to law enforcement. And when asked why they didn't report to law enforcement, 25% said they didn't want the person who harmed them to get in trouble. 10% said they didn't think they'd be treated fairly due to their race, sexual orientation, gender identity, or immigration status. 36% said they didn't think they'd be believed. And 42% indicated they were afraid. NJ Casa contends that a system that is reaching a mere fraction of survivors is a system that is not working at all, and in response urges the following immediate and direct actions. Point 1, accountability for Judges Troiano and Silva. Earlier this week, when the Supreme Court of New Jersey considered disciplinary action towards Judge Russo from Ocean County, the close your legs judge, Chief Justice Rabner asked, quote, "Could a reasonable victim of sexual assault come away with confidence in the integrity of the process if Judge Russo presided over that matter in the future?" NJ Casa asked the same question when considering the fitness of both Judges Troiano and Silva. To be clear, as a social justice-oriented organization, we do not take issue with the ultimate decision to not try children as adults. True pathways for societal reform elude us when juveniles who have caused harm are thrust into the also violent structures of the adult criminal justice system. leaving survivors and those who have caused harm with little opportunity for accountability and healing, two elements that survivors over and over again have said are critically important for them. However, the articulation of the rationale, as amplified by my colleagues who spoke before us today, have minimalized the impact of sexual assault victimization and inflicted further harm not just on the survivors whose cases they were considering, but also the survivors considering engaging in the criminal justice process. NJ Casa calls upon the Supreme Court of New Jersey to review both Judges Troiano and Silva as they are doing to Judge Russo. We believe that justice will prevail. Point 2, strengthen the judiciary's understanding of sexual violence. As illuminated in the statistics already shared, very few survivors of sexual assault are accessing the criminal justice system. And when they do, it's imperative that those responsible for hearing their cases understand the unique trauma associated with sexual assault victimization. To that end, NJ Casa joins the members of the legislature who have introduced long overdue legislation to mandate sexual violence training requirements for judges. For too long, we've been told there isn't enough time. NJ Casa contends that we don't have any more time to lose. Point 3, invest in restorative justice. Across the country, communities are implementing restorative justice programs to expand opportunities for healing and accountability after sexual assaults occur. As restorative justice expert Sujatha Baglia writes, quote, whereas the criminal justice system focuses exclusively on what law was broken, who broke it, and how should they be punished, restorative justice asks, who was harmed, what do they need, whose obligation is it to meet those needs? It's time for New Jersey to invest in these principles. This week, NJ Casa submitted a proposal to the Office of the Attorney General requesting an investment into a large-scale, community-based, sexual violence-focused restorative justice program. Both national and statewide data affirm the need for New Jersey to consider both bold approaches to meeting the needs of sexual violence survivors. As victim survivors follow the news and weigh the options before them, this is the time to expand our portfolio of options to meet their needs. But there's good news. It just so turns out that the Office of the Attorney General has already been exploring and considering ways to weave these principles into the portfolio of programs we offer victim survivors of crime in New Jersey. It's important for you to know now that NJ Casa looks forward to continuing the discussions with our partners in the Office of the Attorney General, and we have confidence that together we can make progress in this arena. Point 4, we commit to productive, solutions-focused dialogue. NJ Casa shares feelings of outrage and disappointment that overt, harmful, victim-blaming attitudes continue to persist in our justice system. However, we are similarly disheartened to read and hear violent responses to these judges, including threats of rape and physical violence. These types of statements are simply not okay. Calling for violence or victimization of anyone, including those with whom we're angry, is never okay. The reality is that we will never create the safer garden state we envision with more violence. Outrage without strategic action solves none of the great challenges before us. We know few of NJ Casa's outlined solutions are quick fixes because we simply do not believe that they exist. What is required is divestment from the ways that our systems are falling short and investments in what survivors are asking for, solutions that exist outside of our current system. We're not doing the work with integrity if we continue to only offer one option for justice, if we excuse those whose conduct has caused harm, and if we aren't building the best and most responsive systems we can for victims and survivors. So I call for all of you to join us. Do not despair. The long, tedious process of smashing the patriarchy is the work passed down to us by our ancestors. And along the way, we must celebrate every success, and we've had so many over the last few years. In May, Governor Murphy signed legislation expanding the civil statute of limitations for sexual assault. Advocates and tenacious legislative leaders fought for over a decade for this change. In November, the Attorney General released updated standards for sexual assault response teams, a product of over 2 years of work and 14 years overdue. In April of last year, Governor Murphy signed legislation that closed loopholes in the hiring practices for individuals working in our schools, reducing opportunities for child predators to move from school to school and town to town. In 2017, Governor Christie signed legislation that mandated sexual violence training for law enforcement, a policy that took years and years to advance. In 2015, after years of advocacy, Governor Christie signed legislation that expanded access to protective orders for survivors of sexual violence by signing the Sexual Assault Survivors Protection Act into law. And just a couple of weeks ago, the legislature and Governor Murphy agreed to an increased investment into the free and confidential services provided by New Jersey's 21 county-based rape crisis centers by signing $6.6 million into the FY20 state budget. None of these things happened overnight. So stick with us. Follow us on social media, join our listservs, attend our events, join us as we continue working to amplify the voice of survivors and restructuring our statewide response to meet their needs. I want to close by thanking the organizers of today's event and the colleagues and friends with whom I've had the privilege of sharing the stage. I want to thank the professionals on the front lines who work with survivors and their loved ones every day, those providing counseling at rape crisis centers, those answering 24-hour hotlines, the members of law enforcement, forensic nurse examiners, and confidential advocates who show up to meet survivors at 3 a.m. after an assault has occurred. There are so many people doing good work in New Jersey, and the instances that brought us here today have highlighted tremendous opportunity for us to do even more good together. And we look forward to continuing that work with all of you. Thank you.
Tell me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Tell me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Thank you all so much for coming out here today. Thank you to the speakers, to the press. This fight is far from over, and I hope to see you at the next battle.